We're going to talk about works cited today, okay? I want to make sure you understand what works cited is, and I want to try to give you a pretty good idea of how it works. Now, I put in right at the beginning above this video to get your textbook out, and probably some pen and paper would be a good idea too. And I'll add that on the note for what you should have with you before you start watching this. Your list of works cited is all of the works that you took pieces of information from in putting together your research paper. Okay? Again, almost everything in your research paper should be coming from research. And within the paper itself, in the body of the paper, at the end of each idea that you took from someplace, you should be telling the author of that work, if there's an author for it. If you don't have an author, then part of the title, and if there's pages, the page number. And we did that in a previous lesson here. Okay, we did that typed out, and I told you the pages that you do that. And if you have questions about that, we'll talk about that in class on Wednesday. Okay, you should be viewing this on Tuesday. Obviously, I'm ready for the Bills game tonight, and I may get done with this before it starts, but that's all right. This is more important, making sure that you guys know what works cited is. Okay, so the list of works cited is going to be a list of all of the works that you used in putting together your paper. And in the body of your paper, you will have in-text references or parenthetical references. They're the same thing. Again, we talked about that another time, okay? But those parenthetical references give you just a little piece of information, and that piece of information points you to the list of works cited, so that, let's say, in your paper you took an idea from Jones's book, whatever, it doesn't matter what the name of the book is. So at the end of that idea, whether it's a quote or a paraphrase or a summary, at the end of that idea you put in parentheses Jones, page 272. Which means you got that idea from something by Jones on page 272. Now, what's this thing? What's Jones? Okay, that's what your list of works cited is, and your list of works cited is the last page in your research paper. Okay, so you'll have 6 pages of text, 6 or more pages of text, and then a works cited page, a page that lists all the works you used. Okay, so there is a very specific format for setting up a works cited, and there's a very specific format for each entry in your works cited. Okay, your book dedicates about 35 pages to showing you all of the forms you would use in a works cited. Okay, and those 35 pages start in your text on page 429 and go to 463. So, like on 429, you'll have a book by one author, okay, and then you'll have a book by 2 authors, a book by 3 or more authors. It's a different form for each one, okay. If you took an article out of a magazine and you have the author for that, there's a specific form with the author's name, the title of the article, the title of the magazine, the date of publication of the magazine, and the pages from that magazine that the article came from. And this is all information that I told you to put down, each one individually, on what we called bibliography cards, the very first index cards that we talked about using. Okay, so if you did that, and if you did that in the order that we showed you, then really, to set up your to set up your list of works cited, all you really have to do is put those cards in alphabetical order and then type up your list. Okay, but there are very specific things that go into that list and on that list, and it goes in very, very specific ways. Okay, if you look in your text on page 475 and 476, there is a sample works cited. Okay, so look now in your text at page 475 and 476. Okay, notice an inch or so down, you see the words works cited centered. Okay, that's what goes at the top of your list. Okay, if you only have about 6 entries, which probably a lot of you do, I think I told you a minimum of 6 entries. Some of you may have many more than that, but you need at least 6. So if you only took information from 6 places, then you could come down a little bit farther than an inch. But if you're going to come close to filling up a page in your works cited, then just come down an inch or so, okay? So near the top of the page, the words works cited. Works is capitalized, cited is capitalized, okay? And then this entire page is double spaced all the way through it. So between works cited and the first entry, you skip a line. So it's double spaced, okay? And then when you get into the first entry on there, you have the first line of the first entry, and then you skip a line down to the second entry. And when you finish that first entry, you skip a line before you go to the second entry, okay? So you're simply double spacing all the way through, which is really the same way that you typed your paper, okay? However, in works cited, it takes a little more effort than just typing your paper because the indentation is very different too. So, works cited right across the top, okay? Then you are double spacing all the way through your works cited, okay? Now, how do you figure out what order to put things in on your works cited page? It's simple. They go in alphabetical order by the first word in the entry. So if you have the author for every entry in your works cited, your entries will go in alphabetical order by the last name of the author. Okay? So if you look at that sample, the first entry is Conley, Sarah. This is on page 475 again. Okay? And if you look down here, there's no other entries that start with a name, that start with a letter, no other last names that start with a letter that would be an A or a B. So Conley is the first one. So the entries in your works cited go in alphabetical order. It's not in the order that you use the things in works cited. It's alphabetical order by the author's last name. What happens if I don't have an author? Okay, then you put it in the same alphabetical order, but by the first word in the title. So if you look at the second entry on page 475, okay, you see the facts on junk food marketing and kids, and then a bunch of other information. Okay, well, the doesn't count for a word in putting it in alphabetical order. Okay, so skip the and go to the next word, and that tells you what to alphabetize it by. So we have C, Conley, then we have F, facts. Okay, so again, works cited gets set up in alphabetical order by the first word that's in there. If you have an author, then that author's last name is what you'll be alphabetizing it by. If you don't have an author, then it's the title of the work, okay? And the doesn't count in there, so you'd alphabetize it by the title, okay? Hopefully you're all with me so far, okay? If you go down to the next entry in there, you have a work by Goodwin, Lorene Swainston, okay? So we had Conley, C, F, then G, Goodwin, okay? And then the rest of the information on there. So you can see they are all in alphabetical order all the way down from there on. So your works cited, the word works cited on top, the whole thing in alphabetical order, the whole thing double spaced, okay? Now, what else? Okay, whoop. Every so often, that just dulls a little bit if I'm not moving a lot. In fact, sometimes it stops if I'm not moving, which is why I'm moving my hands so much. Okay, I hope you appreciate I dressed for the occasion for you too. Okay, okay. So um, you're used to regular indentation, where the first line of each entry, of each paragraph, you indent 6 spaces, and then each succeeding line in that paragraph goes over to the margin. In a works cited, we use reverse indentation. Okay, it's just the opposite. So in works cited, the first line in each entry starts at the margin, and then when you get down to a second line in that entry, you indent it 6 spaces. Okay? Then when you go down to the next entry, you go over to the margin, and then when you get to a second line, it's in 6 spaces, and the second entry there has actually 1, 2, 3, 4 more lines. Each of those 4 lines is indented the same 6 spaces. Okay? Then we go down to the next one. Goodwin, Loreen, Swainston. That one is only 2 lines long. We started at the margin, Goodwin. When we got down to the second line, and it starts with Crusaders, that's indented 6 spaces. Okay? So those are the cardinal rules for works cited. Now, there's a lot of different forms for works cited. So I told you, your book has all of these different forms on page 429 through 463. Hopefully, most of your sources are pretty simple, and I think most of them will be. Most of them come right from the internet, and so if you look at the second entry, okay, the facts on junk food marketing in kids, and the title of articles go in quotation marks. Okay, the title of articles go in quotation marks. Titles of books, magazines, periodicals, you underline those. Now, in the book, they show them in italics. You can put them in italics if you want, either underline or italics. Not both, but titles of books, titles of magazines, titles of newspapers, titles of periodicals. Okay, either underline or italicize, but not both. Okay, then after that, in that second entry, you see after the word Prevention Institute, www.preventioninstitute.org, and then they give the whole internet address on how you would get there and the date that the person found that information. Okay, and I told you to record that date when you were doing your idea cards. You know, I told you to record the date that you found things on the internet. Here's why. Okay, you have to put that in your works cited. Okay, so most of your stuff probably came from the internet, so make sure you give the internet address for all of these things, because if Cole is writing a research paper on the development of the National Hockey League, and Matt wants to read about it and then wants to get more information, he comes to a particular idea that in there, the start of the WNHL, okay? And Cole will have told exactly where that idea came from, and then in his works cited, we'll know, you know, that idea, that in-text reference in the paper itself will be pointing toward a specific idea in his works cited, okay? And I'll review this a little bit in class on Wednesday too, okay? But that way, if Matt wants to go exactly to the place that Cole found it, all of the information is going to be there, okay? That's what works cited does. Between the in-text reference and the works cited, we know exactly where each idea comes from. And of course, the works cited is the list of all of the sources that you used. So if you look at these, you can see that they are very specific things. If you look the third one up from the bottom, Nestle, Marion, food politics, how the food industry influences nutrition and health. Okay, so that's a book written by Marion Nestle, are nestled. And the name of the book is Food Politics: How the Food Industry Influences Nutrition and Health. Okay, and then we have the publisher, University of California Press, and the year it was published. When you're dealing with books, you don't have to put the page number that the information that you used it from in the works cited. Okay, it's only when you're dealing with periodicals, magazines, newspapers, and such that you put down the page numbers in the works cited that information comes from. Because when you're dealing with a book, okay, in the in-text reference that we talked about, the parenthetical reference that we talked about, and we'll again we'll review all this stuff on Thursday, you're giving page numbers for books in there. Okay? So, what I want you to do between now and Wednesday is I want you to do your works cited. I want you to have a works cited. You can type it out, you can write it up. I want it on paper. I don't want it just on your screen. I want it on paper, okay? So that you and I can look at each individual person's and make sure that we know what we're doing. This is a critical part of the paper, and I have to tell you, lots of students lose lots of points because they don't do their works cited correctly. So use your time in class on Tuesday when you're seeing this video, and then Tuesday night, use some time so that you have a works cited. You may as well try to type it out if you want to, rather than write it out, because if it's perfect, then it's perfect, and you don't have to do it again, so that's kind of nice. And if it's not perfect, that's okay. You can just go back in with what you did and try to do corrections, okay? So I don't know if you can see this. Nah, it really doesn't show up, does it? I kind of rip a little bit of a works cited. And the first work that I had was by Aaron Abrams, so it starts out Abrams, Aaron. Why did I do that as the title of the book? Harvard Press is the publisher in 2017. Then the next was an article by Robert Brankow. Quotation marks around the title of the article, Trans Fat Bans and Human Freedom. And then period after that, so that's in quotation marks. And then the American Journal of Bioethics is underlined. That's the work it came from, okay? And then the volume and the date of publication and such, okay? And then all of the pages that information appeared on. And then we have another book by Jeremiah Johnson and Tim Woods, okay? When you have two authors, only the first author listed, only that one's last name goes first. So it's Johnson, Jeremiah, and Tim Woods, okay? And then the name of the book and the publisher. The name of the book, Western New York's Best High School, is published by the University of Calcutta Press in 2020, okay? Why doesn't Woods have to go before Tim? Because we alphabetize this by the first author listed, Johnson, okay? When you get to the second author, we don't need to put his last name first because we've alphabetized it by the first author, okay? So do your best to put together a works cited, okay? Use your book. Again, sample works cited 475, 476, and all the forms that you can possibly use in a works cited appear in your book on 429 through 463, okay? Questions, you know where to get me. I will see you Wednesday. We are having our class Wednesday rather than Thursday because last Thursday my wife had surgery, and this Thursday I have to take her back to the doctor, okay? So we're meeting on Wednesday instead, okay? So you will be doing this in class on Tuesday, and then I'll see you on Wednesday, okay? Questions, you know where to get me.